Shavua Tov. I'm getting there. Oh, almost. Miriam, you can't join us tomorrow morning?
Nope. I restart my class tomorrow
I have a work party tomorrow.
in the evening.
I'm hosting.
Oh, you're hosting. Woohoo.
Where it's really, really important for people I work with to do it. And obviously it's challenging with COVID. We didn't do it last year. We did some outdoor stuff in the summer, but
Right.
made it now. So that's the plan.
That's nice.
From like 4 to 8 or 4 to 7 or something. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's a long party.
It's a lot of people.
What do you do for food?
So Cecily does a lot of it. The girls help a little and we buy some takeout.
You doing it in your house?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay.
They really like coming. I mean, it's a crowd. I mean, the people who come are those who really bring their kids. They, it's a nice.
Very nice.
I mean, it's
Very
not that
nice.
30 people though. So anyways,
Okay.
because of the evening, there's no way I'll be up for Daf Yomi.
It's all right. I'll do it on my own. I actually want to finish tomorrow and do the Siyum already.
Yeah, so you have to team. I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest. I mean, I've just been very overwhelmed.
Well, we talked about it, and it's like nobody could agree on what to do, and we're not a lot of people, and so regardless, there's never going to be a minyan. So
right, I agree. I think maybe. I mean, it's hard.
It is hard.
We need more people, but what can we do?
It's hard to recruit. Look, there's people that had started and that left in the middle in HIR. So
yeah,
I don't know how many.
Last cycle, and I don't know. Obviously, if it was in person, it would be different, but it's very hard to recruit.
Right. So no, but even on Zoom, there were people that had joined that had started and then that like left in the middle. But I don't know how many there are during the week. What we do during on the weekend is not representative really of it's not the same people at all.
I think it's very small. I mean, the challenge is that, there's a lot of places to hear Daf Yomi, during the week or anytime, and it's all Zoom. So it's not the same as being in a class, but if you never met a person or sat with a person, like it's hard
Are there a lot?
I mean, I don't personally know, but I actually, we hosted a guy Friday night, since we have a few minutes, hopefully.
Yeah.
We hosted this couple Friday night. Someone asked us to have them from Shul. They live in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And they are visiting because their kids are married, whatever, and they're thinking of moving to New York. So, I think they're 65 or something. So he told me, he said, "Oh, I listened to Rabbi Linzer's Daf Yomi."
Yeah, but that's not a daily, that's something that is pre-recorded.
He made it sound like he was listening years ago. So I said to him, I was like, he's like, "Oh, but it stopped, and now I listen to the recordings or something." He said that, I said, "Oh, well, you could join us. We have a Zoom thing." He said, "Oh, Then he listens to someone in Israel. The woman,
Rabbi Rosner.
No. And there's to Hadran, Michelle Farber.
Yeah,
Michelle Farber does it at 6:00 in the morning, right?
I'm not sure what time it. I don't know if he listens recorded or not.
Yeah. Anyway, it is recorded.
He told me it's a lot of people. He seems like 1,000 people.
It's huge. It's very big. I mean, I get the recording every day, so occasionally I listen, but my go-to. That's not my go-to.
I pitched it, but it's tricky. Anyways.
Yeah, so recordings, there's tons of them out there. Daf Yomi groups, like Elchanan actually found us on the internet. He lives in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
He said he couldn't find anything local, so that was really funny. Okay.
Anyways, let's learn. Today's Daf Chavtet. Elchanan, we're gonna do tomorrow morning at 7:30. It might just be you and me. It looks like.
Okay.
So. Either.
Okay, Ellie, just stay on afterwards. I want to just talk to you.
Sure, absolutely. You want to call? You want to talk on the phone, maybe?
Yeah, I'll call you on the phone.
You know my number?
I'll double. I don't know if I have it. You can
write it down now, or?
Yeah, just put it in the chat.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat at the end.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Hi, Shavua Tov.
Okay, so today's daf is a very exciting one. We're getting very close to the end of Ta'anit. 2 more days. And today is Daf Chavtet 29. And so this parak, the fourth parak, again, it's weird when we pick it up once a week or twice a week, but I pick it up with you. But obviously the themes keep changing, right? So this whole parak, the last parak of Ta'anit, is actually more of what we are familiar with Ta'anit, right? Which are the fast days that have to do with the Churban of the Beit HaMikdash. and the happy days that we talked about yesterday. But the Mishnah in the beginning of the fourth parak talks about the 5 things that happened on Shiv Asar B'Tammuz and the 5 things that happened on Tisha B'Av. And so we are up to the second line, I think, of Daf Chavtet Amud Aleph. And there were 5 things that happened on Tisha B'Av. The first of the 5 calamities that happened on Tisha B'Av was that the Jewish people in the desert who left Mitzrayim or on their way to Eretz Yisrael, they had a gezerah, they wouldn't go. The gezerah after the Meraglim, after the spies. It says the Gemara in the second line of Daf Chavtet, B'Tisha B'Av nigzar al avotenu shelo yikansu la'eretz. On Tisha B'Av, on the 9th day of Av, the decree came to our forefathers in the desert that they would not be able to go into Eretz Yisrael. Now, how do we know that? Meaning, how do we know the date? Obviously, the events happened in the pasuk. But how do you know the date was Tisha B'Av? Torah does not say that, right? Minalan, so dichtiv. The answer is that you've got to follow through the psukim chronologically. And if you go, this is going to be a little bit of a whirlwind of the Torah, or at least this part of the Torah. It says at the end of Parshat Pekudei, end of Sefer Shemot, Vayhi b'chodesh harishon b'shana hashenit be'echad b'chodesh hukama mishkan. Finally, at the end of the Egel and the building of the Mishkan and all that stuff, they put up the Mishkan, and the date given in the Torah is the first month, the second year, in the first day of the month, right? What we call Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that was the second year. And what does the second year mean, right? Amar Mar, the Gemara explains that the second year means that Shana Rishona, the first year after they left Egypt, if you recall, they left on the 14th of Nisan or 15th of Nisan, Asa Moshe at Mishkan. In the first year, Moshe made the Mishkan. Shni'ah, in the second year, he came at the Mishkan. He came Moshe at the Mishkan. He sent out the Mishkan and says now this is what we're bringing this for, Vish Shalach Meraglim. And then the Meraglim, which was the event that precipitated the ultimate not going into Israel, that happened in the second year after the Mishkan, which is the order in the Torah. Of course, not everything in the Torah is in order necessarily, but that's what the Braita says is the order. So second year. Now it says, Vayihi, this is in Ba'alotcha, Vayihi b'shana ha'shenit b'chodesh ha'sheni b'esrim l'chodesh na'aleh ha'anan mi'al ha'mishkan ha'idut. Right? Remember, they inaugurated the Mishkan on the first day of the first month. Then they did a lot of stuff. Parshat Bamidbar, Naso, they counted them, they arranged them. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on in preparation for travel. Says the pasuk, in the second year, the second month, on the 20th day of the month, the curtain, not the curtain, the cloud lifted and it was time to travel. Okay, so that was D-Day, right? They were about to leave and start going on the trip and go to Israel, which would have taken, a week or whatever, some amount of time. So that's the time. Then, so remember, keep our date here. We're on the 20th day of the second month, which is ER, okay? Then it says, they traveled for 3 days. So 3 days later is the 22nd day of ER, okay?
Not the 23rd?
It's a good question. Let's go with 22nd for now. Let's say they
20th plus 3?
Well, 20, 21, 22. Okay, up to the 23rd. But they traveled on the 20th, so through the 22nd. Okay. That was the day that they left. They rebelled against God, because then it says right afterwards, "Ha'asafsuf asher b'kirbo hitavu ta'ava." Right, the asafsuf, the I don't know how you translate asafsuf literally, but the rabble, we usually say, among them had a big desire for meat. By Yeshuvu, and they sat down, by Yifku, Gam B'nai Yisrael, and everyone cried and said, Hashem, give us meat. And then Moshe gets very angry and says to God, where am I going to find meat for them? Remember the whole story, the birds that came in. And it says that they will eat the meat, right? They will continue eating it, not one day, not a week, but a whole month. Ad chodesh yamim, right? They're going to eat it for a whole month. Dahavile esrin v'tartin b'sivan. If you add up all those days, you get to the 22nd day of Sivan. Okay, so that's why I said 22 of ER, right? So a month later is the 22nd day of Sivan. Again, you could count your months however you want. You could say it started on the 23rd of ER and ended on the 22nd of Sivan. 1 month later, when they finished the whole calamity of the meat, was the 22nd day of Sivan. And then, unfortunately, there was another problem before they could keep traveling. which is the whole event of Miriam and Moshe and Aaron speaking about Moshe, right? And then Miriam got Sarat, and she was, Moshe davened for her. And it says that Tiskar Miriam Shivat Yamim. That Miriam was like anyone with Sarat, was sent outside of the camp and isolated for 7 days. So, and remember, the people didn't travel while Miriam was there, because remember, the whole Rashi brings the whole schut. So Miriam held them up for 7 more days. So now we are on the 29th day of Sivan. Okay, got the chronology here. The Esrin v'Tisha b'Sivan, and then the next thing that happens, sort of, is Parshat Shlach, the next parsha. It says, K'tiv Shalach lecha anashim, and they'll go and they'll investigate Eretz Canaan. Vitanya, so the Braita explains, Be'esrim v'Tisha b'Sivan Shalach Moshe Meraglim. Moshe sent out the Meraglim on the 29th day of Sivan. So you got the order here. Starting on the 17th of Iyar, 20th of Iyar, 3 days of travel, a month of the Slav, 7 days for Miriam. We're on the 29th day of Sivan. Remember, then the pasuk. This again, these are verses we're interspersing with Braita here. It then says, "Vayeshuvu mitorah aretz miketz arba'im yom." The people came back from their exploring the land at the end of 40 days. So 40 days after the 29th day of Sivan is, so we would like it to be, well, we'd like it to be Tisha B'Av Eve, right? We'd like it to be the 8th day of Av, because then the people complained, and Hashem said to them, you complained, you're going to have B'chiyah L'Dorot, or you're going to be punished. So we'd like it to be the 8th day of Av. The problem is, there's just different ways to count it here. But the problem really is that if you count, 1 day in Sivan, and then Sivan usually is 30 days, right? Tammuz usually has 29 days. So if you had 29 days of Tammuz, we're counting 2 days of Sivan. So 29th and 30th of Sivan, 29 days, assuming, of Tammuz, which is 31 altogether. Then they would return on the 9th day of Av, meaning they would return on Tisha B'Av itself. And then the following night would be the 10th day of Av. So ask the Gemara, you don't have 40 days. You should have 39 days. Hani arba'im yom nachi chad have. It's really was only 39 days until Tisha B'Av, not 40 days. Amar Abaya, well, Tammuz dahi shata miluye malye. The Tammuz of that year was 30 days, was malay, right? Usually, again, Sivan is always malay, or almost always. In our calendar, it's always. Tammuz is usually, it depends actually, but usually it's chaser. And so that year it was malay. So it was 2 days of Sivan, 30 days of Tammuz, which is 32, right? I got it right. Yeah. 30 days of, I'm one short, I think, right?
That's right. Then you end up on the 8th.
And you end up on the 8th, correct. Thank you. So then they
30.
return on the 8th of Av. Thank you. I think I got it right. And they returned on the 8th of Av, and then they complained. And that night was Tisha B'Av. And we learned this. We actually had this previously in Psachim. Kara alai moed l'shvar b'churai, that we will extend the moed, meaning we will make the month malay. Vichtiv, and it says on that day that the people came back, which we have now established was the 8th day of Av. Atisa kol ha'eda, the whole nation cried, vayitnu et kolam, they raised their voices, vayifku ha'am balayla hahu, that night. And so that night became Tisha B'Av. Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and there's a bunch of different girsaot here. Rashi's says that year was, he takes out the word Erev. Otayom Tisha B'Av is how they have it. That year, Tisha B'Av Hayad, meaning that evening that they cried was the evening of Tisha B'Av, the night of Tisha B'Av. And Amar Lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God said to them, Atem b'chitem b'chiyah shel chinam, you cried for nothing. You cried because of chinam, your fear of going to Eretz Yisrael when I promised you was going to be okay. Ani kovea lechem b'chiyah l'dorot, I will be kovea that this is a night of crying for the generations because multiple negative things are going to happen on this day. But meantime, we learned that the first negative thing was the punishment of the Meraglim, that they would not go into Israel for 40 years, which happened on the night of Tisha B'Av. That's the first thing. The second thing, we're on the second medium line, Charav HaBayit Barishona. The first Beit HaMikdash was destroyed on Tisha B'Av. How do we know that? Ichtiv, as the pasuk says, this is the pasuk at the end of Melachim, B'chodesh HaChamishi, in the 5th month, which is Av, right? Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, right? The 5th month, B'Shiv'a LaChodesh, in the 7th day of the month, Shiva B'Av, we're going to talk about for a second, He Shnat Sha'asrei Shana Melech Nebuchadnezzar, Melech Bavel. This was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Bavel. But Nebuzaradan Rav Tabachim, Nebuzaradan the butcher, came and Eved Melech Bavel, Yerushalayim. He came up to Yerushalayim by Yisrofet Beit Hashem. So the pasuk in Melachim says that the event of Nebuzaradan coming was in the 7th day of Av. Okay, well, we'll get there in a second. When the story is told in Yirmiyahu, the exact same story with almost the exact same words, it says, "Uvachodesh hachamishi be'asar lachodesh," on the 10th day of the month, right? He shnat shas reshana melech Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel, in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, which, as he quotes over here, in Yirmiyahu, they always refer to him as Nebuchadrezzar, right? So Nebuchadrezzar melech Bavel, Ban Nebuzaradan Rav Tabachim Eved Amad L'fnei Melech Bavel Yerushalayim, etc., and he destroyed the Beit Hamikdash. So there's two conflicting psukim. One pasuk in Melachim says that Nebuzaradan came on the 7th of Av. The other pasuk says the 10th of Av. The Tanya, so the Breita tries to reconcile these, and the Breita says, "Ef shar lomar b'shiva." You can't say that it happened on the 7th because it says elsewhere that it happened on the 10th. Sharik Far Nemer Be'asar. It says in Yirmiyahu that happened on the 10th of Av. But Ef shar lomar Be'asar, sorry, Sharik Far Nemer B'shiva. So how do you reconcile these two, narratives of the story? Haketzad, it must be that what happened was B'shiva nichnesun Nachrim Lehechal. That on the 7th day of Av, the Nachrim, the Babylonians, broke down the walls and made it into the Heichal, and they attacked and took over the Beit Hamikdash. But they didn't destroy it right away. First, they were achlu v'kilkalubo. They ate and they made trouble. They desecrated things and they enjoyed the spoils and they killed people probably. Shvi'i shmini u'tshi'i. I'm sorry, shvi'i u'shmini, for the 7th and the 8th day of Av. So they were plundering for those 2 days. U'tshi'i samuch l'chashecha, and on the 9th day of Av, next to darkness, meaning in the evening, the afternoon of the 9th day, hitzitu bo ha'or. They burnt it, they lit it on fire. So I guess after they had gotten all the food and all the riches, they destroyed everything on their way out. They lit it on fire. V'hayad dolek mahalech kol hayom kulo, and the Beit Hamikdash burned for an entire day. Right, there was a ton of wood and metal and everything was a huge structure, I guess. And so unfortunately, the fire burned on that hill in Yerushalayim for the whole day of the 10th of Av. Okay, Shenemar, and the way we know that it burnt for the whole day is because the pasuk says in Yirmiyahu, "Oin lanu kifana hayom," right? Woe to us as the day goes away. Ki in tut slalei erev, that it takes over. Even we're sort of taking over, meaning we're interfering with the shade, with the tzalal of the shade of the evening, meaning that it was still burning as night fell. Lahainu dam Reb Yochanan, and this in fact is what Reb Yochanan was referring to when he said, if I had been alive at that time, meaning at the time of the Beit HaMikdash being destroyed, I would not celebrate the 9th day of Av. I would commemorate the 10th day of Av. Because the Beit HaMikdash the fire started in the 9th in the evening, but most of the burning and most of the fire and destruction happened on the 10th day of the Av, right? Because it burned all night and all the next day. And so I would have made the fast day on the 10th day of Av. So doesn't matter, why didn't they? Rabbanan, the Chachamim who did not do that, and made Tisha B'Av, that's because Atchalta de Puranita Adifa. Because, unfortunately, the beginning, when you light it on fire, is really what led to it. I mean, it wasn't, obviously it burned for a long time, but it was the event of lighting on fire that we're really mourning. And so that's why when it started being destroyed, when things hit is when you commemorate. But either way, that's how we know from the Psukim that the 9th day of Av is the day that the Beit HaMikdash was burned. Again, not the day it was conquered, but the day it was burned. So that's the first Beit HaMikdash. B'shniya min alan, how do you know the second Beit HaMikdash was destroyed on the 9th day of Av? The Tanya, that's based on a Breita, or a story. The Breita says, that things, go in patterns. You roll, good things happen on good days, and chova liyom chayav. Bad things happen on bad days. Meaning, once it's a bad day, like the 9th day of Av, all kinds of things happen on that day. Says the Breita, Amru, they say, Kishacharav Beit HaMikdash Barishona, when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, and the word Rishona is not so clear here, but we'll keep it because it's in our Gemara. But when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, Oto Hayom Erev Tisha B'Av Haya, that day was the eve of Tisha B'Av, meaning again, like we just said, Tisha B'Av afternoon, right? It wasn't the day before. It was on the 9th day of Av in the afternoon when the fire started in the Beit HaMikdash. Umotzei Shabbat Haya. Now it happened to be that it was the day after Shabbat, meaning it was a Sunday. Umotzei Shvi'it Haita. It was the year after Shvi'it. It was the eighth year of a cycle. Umishmeret Shel Yehoyariv Haita. We've been discussing earlier in the parak the Mamadot and all the periods. This was the period of Yehoyariv, who was one of the families of Leviim. Leviim Omrim Shira. They were. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but they were, observing the Beit HaMikdash practices till the end. So there was a war going on, but there were, everyone was fighting, but there were some Leviim still standing there trying to keep things going, trying to sing the Shira, right? The Omdim al Duchanam, and they were standing where they're on their platform. Uma Shira Hayomim, they were saying the Shira of Vayashav Alehem et Onam, right, which we pray that God will punish those who attack us. So Hashem will fight back, will give back their payment. Uvera'atam yatzmitem, and in their evil, God will uproot them. And the next words are yatzmitem Hashem Eloheinu, that Hashem should uproot our enemies. But they didn't even get to say that. Lo espiku lomar yatzmitem Hashem Eloheinu, they weren't able to finish saying the prayer ad shebo nachrim v'kivshum, until the nachrim came and destroyed them. And this is the important thing of the Braita for us, which is chen b'shni'ah. That also happened in the second Beit HaMikdash. So there is really no textual source for this, but the Braita says that just like in the first Beit HaMikdash was destroyed or burned on the 9th day of Av, so too the second Beit HaMikdash. That was the third event of Tisha B'Av. The fourth one we said was Nokeda Beitar, that Beitar was captured. Remember, Beitar was Bar Kokhba, and the period in the next generation where there were thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who lived in the city of Beitar and ultimately rebelled and were also slaughtered, and that was a terrible thing, a very terrible thing. That also happened in Tisha B'Av, and that says the Gemara is a Gemara. That's a tradition. We have there's no textual description of Beitar. It doesn't show up in our books, but it is known by tradition. And the fifth thing was Nechrusha Ha'ir, the city was plowed over, and that also was a Gemara. That also was a tradition because there's no reference to that in any kind of sources. So these are the 5 things that happened on Tisha B'Av. Tanya, while we're on the topic of Tisha B'Av, there's a Braita which says that Kishacharav Turnus Harashat Eichal, when Turnus Rufus, who was the Roman general, slept there, right? The Roman general who destroyed the Heichal, right, which is the second one. So we said Nebuchadnezzar was the first Beit HaMikdash, but Turnus Rufus, and again, I don't know what, we say Titus all the time, right? But when Turnus Rufus destroyed the second Beit HaMikdash, they also made a gzeira at the same time or similar time to kill Rabbi Gamliel. To kill him, the Roman Senate decided that he was going to be murdered or assassinated. Ba Adon Echad. Now, one of the Adon, the senators, I'll call him, right? One of the Roman, not generals, but one of the Roman leaders came to find Rabbi Gamliel to sort of tell him about this and I guess try to help him. So this Adon came, Va'amad beBeit HaMidrash, and he came and he stood in the Beit HaMidrash, okay, where Rabbi Gamliel would be found. I guess, it wouldn't be easy, like they didn't let him in easily because they were obviously hiding and they were terrified, but he knew where to go, right, to find Rabbi Gamliel. So he came to the Beit HaMidrash, and he said, no, he didn't want to, I guess he thought if he asked Rabbi Gamliel, he wouldn't tell him, he wouldn't say where he was. So what he said was, Bal HaChotam Mitbakesh, the one of the Chotam, right, which literally means the one with the nose, right? Chotam is like a face, a partzuf. Rashi says here, which part of the caricature, is that Bal HaChotam meant the one of stature, that the leader, basically. So that either Rabbi Gamliel had a noticeable nose, face, right? Or that he's one who carried himself with the authority. So Bal HaChotam is the one with the authority. the one who's the chotam is mitbakesh, is wanted by the government. Bal hachotam mitbakesh. So he sort of didn't want to say it explicitly. I guess he would get in trouble. But Shama Rabban Gamliel Azal Tashaminayo. Rabban Gamliel heard this and he caught on right away what this guy was implying, and he ran away and he escaped into the safe room, right, to hide from the Romans. So Azal legabe b'tzina. This Roman somehow got to see Rabban Gamliel in private, right? Meaning he was taken away with the eyes covered to find him. And Amar Lei, so the Roman said to Rabban Gamliel, if I save you, right, there's a decree to kill you. And if I save you, will you bring me to the world to come? Can I get salvation in the world to come if I save your life? So Amar Lehain, so I'm going to say, sure, no problem, right? So this Roman said, Amar Lei, no, ishtabili, I would like a security, right? Can you swear that for me? And he said, okay, ishtabale. So he said, okay, I swear that if you save my life, I will guarantee you a place in the world to come. Says the Gemara, what happened next? Salakli Igra, so this Roman general, again, senator, went up to the roof of, I'll say the Colosseum, but obviously it's not, they were in Israel, presumably. He went up to the roof, and Nafal Mit, and he fell off, and he died. So he jumped off.
Committed suicide?
Sorry?
Committed suicide?
Yeah, but it could be that he did it with plausible deniability, so no one could tell, right? But yes, he was
in order to get Olam Haba?
Well, let's keep reading. Ugamiri, now we have a tradition, that they had, again, I can't verify any of this, but that the Romans had a principle that if they had their Senate and they made a decree, and then before the decree was carried out, one of the judges or one of the senators died, it was a bad omen. It meant that we should cancel the decree. So it meant that basically because he killed himself, and earlier in the day they had decreed death on Rabban Gamliel, that they would cancel the decree against Rabban Gamliel. So basically he was able to save Rabban Gamliel's life by killing himself. Okay, so he was guaranteed a place. Yatzta bat kol amra, a voice came out from Shemayim and said, Adon zeh mezumun l'chayei olam haba. This guy has got he's prepared for his spot in the Olam Haba.
Who was the bat call directed to?
I mean, the world. This is informing us, but it was verifying that Rabban Gamliel's word would be kept. Okay. Anyways, whatever. These are stories. We have these stories.
I understand. No, I'm just kind of.
But that, yeah. So it's Tanur Rabbanan. Now continues the Braita, another Braita. Mishacharav Beit Abayit Rishona, when the first Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, nitkabtzu kitot shel pirchei kuhuna. This also is a very disturbing story. I don't know if you know, this Gemara, the one we just learned so far, is one of these Gemara you're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av, where you're not supposed to learn Gemara on Tisha B'Av, but this is an exception because it's all about the Churban, and of course, so many of us, or many people learn, they've learned this a lot of times because there's a limited list of what you can do. But anyway, so this is one of the Gemarot, and so these stories are pretty well known, some of them, but they're very disturbing nonetheless. So Tanur Rabbanan, let's read this Braita. Says the Braita, when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, nitkabsu kitot shel pirchei kuhuna. There were groups of the pirchei kuhuna, which means the flowering kohanim, but meaning the teenagers.
Ellie, I have to interrupt.
Yes.
I was just on a Zoom Thursday night. It was 2 years since the security guard Miguel Rodriguez saved the Jews in a deli in New Jersey, and Rabbi Weiss had a little Zoom with his widow and his daughter. And it's like 2 years to the day we're reading this Gemara about the Roman guy who killed himself, and the security guard put himself in harm's way to save the rest of the Jewish people in that kosher deli. So like 2 years to the day is just amazing. I'm sorry I interrupted, but I had to
no, thank you for sharing. It's really, really special. Share with Ravabi. So this Braita is another very disturbing story. It says that when the Beit HaMikdash was being destroyed, the Pirchei Kuhuna, again, Pirchei Kuhuna mean, the young Kohanim, the what do you call them, the apprentices, kind of basically, but the up and coming Kohanim got together in groups. Obviously, they were devastated. They were losing the war, and they were about to be killed. Right? They took the keys of the Heichal, so all the different ornamental and real keys, in their hands. And they climbed up to the roof, which might have been on fire by then, right? And they said, Ribono shel olam, we failed. Hoel v'lo zachinu liot gizbarim ne'emanim. Since we were not zocha, we did not merit to be reliable gizbarim. We did not fulfill our responsibility of keeping your Beit HaMikdash in our hands. Yiyu maftechot mesurut lecha. We're giving back the keys. We failed, which obviously is some symbolism and the depth is that we're giving back the keys. We did not do our job. The Beit HaMikdash is being destroyed. We failed. V'zarkum klapei ma'ala. And they all stood there and threw the keys up to Shemayim, up to heaven, not Shemayim, up to
Which
Lamala.
keys are these?
The keys of the Beit HaMikdash, the various, keys you used to open the doors and lishkot, which we learned all about. So
Okay.
all the different things. The yatzdak ein pisat yad, and there was it looked like a little bit of a hand, basically. A palm came, the kibalta mehem, and captured and caught the keys, as if to symbolize, that, which is a nice thing. God accepted essentially the return, and of course the hope is that God will those keys will remain safe for the future rebuilding, right? And the Haim kaftsu v'naflu tocha ar, and they all committed suicide by jumping off the building into the fire, so that they wouldn't be captured or killed in war, or made into prisoners. Va'aleihem konen Yeshayahu Navi. And this is what Yeshayahu Navi, of course, a generation before, 2 generations before, said a kina, that it said Masa, this is in Yeshayahu Chavbet, Masa Gei Chizayon, right? What the vision of Yeshayahu, Ma lecha efo ki alita kulecha legagot, right? He said, what are we doing here? Or what is it? Because you're all going up to the roofs, basically, is what he said. Right? That Kialita Kulach Ligagot, you have all gone up to roofs, which is again in Yeshayahu is a reference maybe that people are mourning and they're going outside because there's destruction. But this story is that the people, the Pirchei Kuna, went up to the roof. The pasuk continues, Tishuat Mele'ah, right? There's a lot of noise, a lot of stuff going on. You're full of noise. Ir Homiyah, the city is all confused. Kirya Aliza, which Aliza means happy, right? A joyous city. Chalalayich lo chalalei cherev. This is the word we dash in the end of the story. Your dead, your chalalayich means your corpses, did not die from the sword. V'lo metei milchama. They did not die from the war. And so we're understanding that this is the reference to these Pirchei Kuna who went up to the roof and died by throwing themselves off. Again, the question about suicide is an appropriate question, but this is the Gemara. And says the Gemara, finishes the Gemara, Afa Kadosh Baruch Hu Ne'amar, also it says about a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Mikarker Ker, the Shoah El Hahar, right? That God, this is a Navi also in Yeshayahu, that God, that's Mikarker Ker, that they're crying, they're shouting over the walls and calling out, Shoah El Hahar, calling out to the mountains. And so the understanding here is that this is Hashem calling out and mourning with Bnei Yisrael, sort of in the equivalent of capturing those keys. It's a very sad writing. That was the Mishnah, right? The Mishnah said that in Tisha B'Av these 5 things happened, and that's why we mourn. The next words in the Mishnah were that Kishenichnas Av Mima'atim B'Simcha, that when Av comes from the month of Av, you start being Mima'it, you start reducing things you do for joy. Amar Rav Yehuda Breder of Shmuel Bar Shilat Mishmei Derav, that Kishem Shemisha Nichnas Av Mima'atim B'Simcha, just like it's true that when Av starts, we are Mima'it B'Simcha, right? Meaning we reduce our joy. Kach Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. The opposite, the same parallel happens in Adar, that when Adar comes, we are Marbeh B'Simcha. Of course, everyone knows the song, right? So that's Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. Rav Papa said, Rav Papa, well, if that's the case, Hilkach, Bar Yisrael, the Itlei Dina B'Hadei Nachri. If you are a Jewish person who has a judgment, a court case with a non-Jew, right? Obviously, with another Jew, it won't work because they have the same mazel as you. But if it's with a non-Jew, right, then lishtamet minei ba'av, you should sort of hide from them. Lishtamet means to hide from them in Av. Dereya mazle, because you got bad luck in Av, right? Av is a bad month for the Jewish people. And so that's the last time you want to end up in court with a non-Jewish person. But you should litzmei nafshe ba'adar, but you should make yourself very available in Adar debare mazle, because Adar is when you'll have good luck. So if you can, of course, unfortunately, Av and Adar are many months away, so it takes some time. But Adar is a month of good mazal, and unfortunately, Av is bad mazal. Now, the next thing is also just a drasha that's because the same person. It says in Yirmiyahu that you were going to give l'teit lahem acharit v'tikva, that the Jewish people will go to Bavel and they'll have an acharit v'tikva. They'll have a future and have hope, right? What is that referring to? Amar Rav Yehuda Breder Rav Shmuel Rashilat, which is the same person we just quoted, Mishmei Derav, Elo de Kalim Ukli Pishtan. The really nice things, the hope that we get in Bavel is like, I was gonna say iPhone and or something, but it's the kalim, which are palm trees, which Rashi, I think Rashi quotes, yeah. Remember when Ula went to Bavel, he found the palm trees and he was like overjoyed because you can get dates for nothing in the street, remember? And Klei Pishtan, and they had high quality clothing. Klei Pishtan are like what are Pishtan? Some synthetic clothing.
Linen?
Linen, thank you. Yes. So Klei Pishtan, which is a big step up from wool, right? Which I guess gets dirtier and louder and heavier and etc.
It's scratchy.
So it's much more durable, Klei Pishtan, apparently. I don't know if that's true or not in nowadays, but that was what it was then. It is still.
I would think it's much more comfortable as opposed to a wool sweater. A linen sweater is much.
And Rashi doesn't say anything, right? I remember elsewhere. I don't remember where. I think their priority was really durability because they were poor as heck, right? So either way, but maybe both were there. But that was like the big perk of Bavel. The future is that you have a lot of trees and a lot of good clothing, which are nice, but of course, unfortunately, you give up a lot for that. And it says also, and a couple of weeks ago we had, Vayomer Ra'a Reach B'ni Kereach Sadeh Asher B'rachu Hashem, right? Yitzchak, when he smelled Yaakov, he said, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which God blessed. What is that talking about? Amar Rav Yehuda Breder Rav Shmuel Bar Shila, Tishmei Derav, it's Kereach Sadeh Shel Tapuchim. It's like a field of Tapuchim. Tosfos here, of course, says what he often says, which is that Tapuchim are etrogim, right? That it smells like a field of etrogim. I don't know what that smells like exactly, but hopefully it's a good smell. Continued the Mishnah, Shabbat shechal tishabav leot b'tocha asurin l'saper l'chabes. This is very practical. So it says the Mishnah, and this is of course something we observe very intently nowadays. The week that Tisha B'Av falls in, you're not allowed to get a haircut and you're not allowed to wash your clothing, okay? Because those are things that are associated with joy and simcha. And so you're not allowed to do those when you're mourning or supposed to be mourning for the Beit HaMikdash. Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, Lo shanu el chabes ulovosh. 1 second. When it says you can't do the laundry, it means you can't do the laundry and wear the clean clothing, right? But if you just want to do laundry for the future, but aval chabes ulahaniach mutar, it would be permitted to do laundry and save it for the future. It's not that there's any prohibition in doing laundry. It's that you're not allowed to wear clean clothing or fresh clothing. And so they didn't want you to do laundry if you're then going to wear it. But Rav Sheshet says, I disagree. You can't even wash clothing to leave for the future, because that's also, you get simcha, right? When you're washing it, you're thinking about how you're going to wear it in the future. You're still planning for a happy day. And so we don't want you to be engaged in anything that is supposed to be associated with the time of happiness. Amr of Sheshet, says Rav Sheshet, I know I'm right, that the halacha is that you can't even wash clothing and we'll use it later. It's Keda, I know. The Batli Katsri, the Beirav Matya, right? That the Katsri in the house of Beirav, sorry. The Batli Katsri, the Beirav, that the Katsrim, the cleaners in the Beirav, they all take vacation the week of Tisha B'Av, right? Why do they have to take vacation? Rashi, I think, or Tosi, yeah, both of them. No, Rashi says that Katsri it's an Arabic word, and that's how you say cleaners or laundry in Arab. I don't know if anyone here speaks Arabic or what word it might be. But he says Lashon Yishmael. I assume that's Arabic. Anyways, Tosfos here quotes that they're katsri, right? Katser means to make something smaller, to shrink it. So of course, when you wash your clothing, it all shrinks, right? So that katsri might mean because when you launder things, they shrink. So that's where they're called katsri. Okay, either way. These were the cleaners in the house of Rav would take off on the week of Tisha B'Av. Why did they take off? Right? Surely Rav had a big house and he had many things. Why can't they wash the sheets and the blankets for next week? It must be, says Rosh Hashanah, that you're not allowed to even wash. Now, Matir Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna asked a question from the following Breita. The Breita says, and this is, we're going to talk about a few things here, but we'll get to our point in a little bit. B'chamishi on Thursday of the week of Tisha B'Av, mutarim mipnei kavod haShabbat. You're allowed to wash clothing because of Shabbat. So you're allowed to wash because you need clothing for Shabbat. Now it says the Gemara, 1 second. Lamai, what are you washing for on Thursday? It's saying you're allowed to wash your clothes and put them on Thursday. What does that do with kavod Shabbat, right? That's my kavod Shabbatika. Why would you think you're allowed to wash and put on your clothing on Thursday? Because the next day is Shabbat. Ella must be saying you can wash them lehaniach. You can wash your suit on Thursday and then put it on Friday, right? So clearly, if you can only wash it on Thursday because of Shabbat, in a regular day, you can't wash it, even if you're not going to wear it, right? Ella, it must be b'chamishi hu d'sharei because of Shabbat. Aval haShabbat kula, the rest of the week, meaning Sunday to Thursday to Wednesday, asur. And so, well, that's not a proof. Because the olam, it could be in the chabes ulavosh. It could be that you're allowed, they might be saying that on Thursday of the week of Tisha B'Av, you can wash your clothing and put them on. Why are you putting it on now for Shabbat? You only have one article of clothing, right? You got one robe or one suit that you can wear. So you have to wash it for Shabbat. You don't want to wash it on Friday because it's going to be, still wet and not drying and leaving it to the last minute. So you wash it on Thursday because that's when you need to wash it in order to wear it for Shabbat. In fact, we've seen this elsewhere we'll see it soon, I guess, in Moed Katan. Remember, you're not allowed to wash clothing on Chol HaMoed, right? Because you're supposed to do it before the Chag. But says the Braita, or says Rabbi Yochanan, if you only own one article of clothing, you're allowed to wash it on Chol HaMoed because you need to do it in order to wear it. Itmar Nami, Amar of Binyamin, Amar of Lazar. In fact, the Binyamin, in the name of Rabbi Lazar, said, Lo shanu el lechabes ulo vosh. And in fact, the prohibition of washing clothing on the week of Tisha B'Av is only to wash them and to wear them. Aval lehaniach mutar, but you're allowed to wash clothing for the future. So it's not according to this. We don't pass it this way. But according to this, the act of washing itself is not the problem. It's the fact that you're going to wear it. Ask the Gemara from the following Braita. Quotes the Braita were 3 lines from the last 4 lines from the last narrow lines. Asur lechabes lefnei Tisha B'Av. Afilo lahaniach lachar Tisha B'Av. So pretty clear. This Braita says you're not allowed to wash things before Tisha B'Av, even if you're not going to wear it and you're going to put it aside to wear after Tisha B'Av. Okay, so period. Further says the Braita, gihutz shalanu kibush shelahem. Our gihutz. Now this is a Gemara we're going to have in very deep detail in Moed Katan, because on Chol HaMoed you're not supposed to wash. There's a huge discussion on what's washing. So my short introduction will be that they generally had 2 types of ways to clean their clothing back then. One was called kibus, which means washing, right? And they would put it in water, put it in the stream, let it soak, take it out, and dry it. There wasn't really much else to it. And then there was the process of gihutz. Gihutz was a much, much more involved washing. It's not so clear. There's a lot of different opinions, depending on where you are in Shas, about how many steps were involved in gihutz. One of the involvement in gihutz was that they would actually stretch it, maybe. Then there are other parts where they would press it, and they would maybe use stones, to make things pressed. There's another opinion, which I think Tosfos quotes here, but not here. I don't see it actually. I forgot where. The Rebbeinu Chananel quotes it. That's where it was. That gihutz, he says, is where you put ma'avrile chumrata. You put chomer, you put some kind of material like soap, basically, into the water with the clothing. So that gihutz is what we generally would consider washing with chemicals or washing with soap. Okay. Now, whether all chemicals matter, or only some chemicals, but either way, gihutz is a more intensive way to wash and one that's more prohibited. So what the Braita is saying is that gihutz shelanu, when we do gihutz in Bavel, that is kibush shelahem. That's like washing in Eretz Yisrael, meaning that again, the assumption here is that the water was either cleaner in Eretz Yisrael or flowed more rapidly, so that the water in Bavel was dirtier. And so if you just put your clothing into the water in Bavel, it gets much less clean than in Eretz Yisrael. And in order to clean it equivalent to what they do in Eretz Yisrael, you have to do what's called gihutz. You have to do soap, or you have to do pressing, more steps. But the implication, as Rashi says, is that you're allowed to wash your clothing in Bavel, because washing them doesn't really get them that clean. And so, you might take some of the smell away, but it probably add more smell, right? So it's not a problem. But continues the Braita, ukli pishtan ein b'hem mishum gihutz. But the whole prohibition of gihutz does not apply to kli pishtan. Again, maybe because what we said earlier, they're more durable, and so it doesn't really, unlike wool, which is dry clean only, right? You got to be much more careful, and you got to stretch it out. It shrinks, it gets ruined. Kli pishtan are not as impacted by washing them. Anyways, tiyufta, the short point of that Braita is that it seems like the opinion that you're allowed to wash clothing, not to wear them, is wrong. Let's do a few more lines, but maybe we won't have to finish because we have some time to make up on Monday. Except for Miriam, maybe. Shalach Rav Yitzchak bar Giyur Mishmei Rav Yochanan, Af Abdi Shamu Kli B'shtanim Mehem Mishum Gihutz. Even though they said that there's no prohibition of washing, of doing gihutz on Kli Pishtan, Asur Lilavshan B'Shabbat Shechal Tisha B'Av Liot B'tocha. You're not allowed to wear freshly cleaned clothing, even if they're Kli Pishtan, in the week of Tisha B'Av. So although washing them is not a problem because it's not as good for them, wearing clean clothing, even Pishtan, is prohibited in the week of Tisha B'Av. Amar Rav, now says Rav something which is something we do rely on, Halacha, and is very helpful. Lo shanu elo lefanav. That's only before Tisha B'Av. Right, let's say Tisha B'Av is on Wednesday, right? So you're not allowed to wear clean clothing on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday because Tisha B'Av. Aval la'acharav mutar. But after Tisha B'Av, you're allowed to wear clean clothing. The next day and the rest of the week, you can wear clean clothing. Shmuel Amar, no. Afilu la'acharav nami asur. Tisha B'Av is the whole week. If this is the week of Tisha B'Av, you're sad before and you're sad after. So yeah, thankfully we don't paskin this way, but that you're not allowed to wear clean clothing even the rest of the week after Tisha B'Av. Meitvei. Ask him, what about the following Braita? The Braita says, Shabbat shechal Tisha B'Av liot b'tocha, the week in which Tisha B'Av falls, asur l'saper u'lechabes. You're not allowed to wash, as our Mishnah said this, you're not allowed to get a haircut, you're not allowed to wash your clothing. U'b'chamishi mutarim, now Thursday you're allowed to, make kavod Shabbat. Ketzad, chal liot be'achad b'Shabbat. If Tisha B'Av falls out on Sunday, then mutar l'chabes kol Shabbat kula. Right, then you can wash the whole week because the whole week before was not the week of Tisha B'Av. Now, you're probably wondering if you're Ashkenazi that we observe the 9 days, which we haven't heard that concept yet in the Gemara, right? So there's no 9 days yet. We'll get to where that comes from, but right in the Sfardim, of course, are following this Gemara much closer. It's just the concept of Shvuah Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. It's the week that Tisha B'Av falls on. So if Tisha B'Av falls on Sunday, there's no week, right? There's no time that's prohibited. Again, don't go home yet. We got to learn tomorrow's daf. But if it falls out on Sunday, then there's nothing that's asur. B'sheni, b'shlishi, u'b'revi'i, u'b'chamishi. If Tisha B'Av falls out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then lifanav asur. All the days of the week leading up to Tisha B'Av are asur in haircuts and in washing. But acharav mutar. But afterwards, the next days of the week are mutar. Which again seems very, very clearly against Shmuel, right? That's the question. Chal liot be'erev Shabbat. Let's say Tisha B'Av falls out on Friday. So then, remember, you're not allowed to wash and take a haircut from Sunday to Thursday. But it's mutar l'chabes b'chamishi mipnei kavod Shabbat. You're allowed to wash on Friday. Again, conspicuously, it doesn't say you're allowed to get a haircut, which again is a matter of discussion. But you're allowed to wash your clothing on Thursday, mipnei kavod Shabbat. And, this is fascinating, Im lo kibes b'chamishi, if you didn't do your laundry on Thursday and Tisha B'Av's on Friday, right? What are you supposed to do now? How are you going to have clean clothes for Shabbat? Says the Braita, mutar im lo kibes b'chamishi b'Shabbat, mutar l'chabes be'erev Shabbat min ha'mincha u'lamala. You can actually wash your clothing on Tisha B'Av itself, on Erev Shabbat after the mincha in the afternoon. So that's pretty extreme, right? Says the Gemara, Layit ale Abaya. Abaya used to curse, right, and look disfavorably, became Rav Acha bar Yaakov, on someone who did this. So I don't know if he's arguing with the Braita, but he was very unfavorably disposed to people doing that. But chal liot b'sheni v'chamish, fine. So that's the first part of the Braita. The next part of the Braita is chal liot b'sheni v'chamishi korin shlosha u'maftir echad. Just again, this is a side point. If Tisha B'Av falls out on Monday or Thursday, you read 3 portions in the Torah, but then 1 portion does maftir, which is what we do. If it's b'shlishi b'revi'i, korei echad maftir echad. If it falls out on Tuesday or Wednesday when there's no Torah reading usually, but you need to have a Torah reading for Tisha B'Av. Just call one person to the Torah, and that person reads the maftir. That's of course not what we do. Rav Yossi Omer Le'olam Korin Shlosha Maftir Echad. You always read 3 people with one maftir, even if Tisha B'Av is on Tuesday or Wednesday. But either way, Tiyufta de Shmuel, this in fact is it shows that Shmuel is wrong. That when we observe the week of Tisha B'Av, we mean the week up to Tisha B'Av, not the days afterwards. And Amar Lecha Shmuel Tanai, and we're going to stop here. Shmuel's answer, which we'll see tomorrow morning, God willing, is that although this Braita clearly disagrees with me, in fact, there's another Tana that agrees with me who says that not only can you not wash your clothes and get a haircut on the days leading up to Tisha B'Av, but also the days after Tisha B'Av for that entire week. We'll pick up tomorrow morning. Tomorrow we're learning at 7:30 in the morning on Zoom. I hope you can all make it. And Shavua Tov.
What tov, thank
I'm not
you.
my number in the chat.
Shavua Tov.
I forgot. What's my number? 646. There you go. You got it?
Hold on. Just.
It's also available in the WhatsApp group.
Oh yeah, that's true. Good point.
Thank you. Shavua tov.